Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all.
Thank you.
Before I start the discussion, I would like to tell you that in today's group discussion, we are going to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of studying overseas. To start the discussion, I would like to introduce you to my fellow group members. So on my right is Mr. Khalid Al-Hardi, Mr. Faisal Rashid, and on my left is Mr. Abdullah Khalad and Mr. Mohammed Hindi. And I am Basim Chishti, who will be leading the group discussion. My panelists on my right will be discussing the advantages, while on the left will be discussing the disadvantages. So before we start the discussion, I would like to tell you what does studying overseas means. Studying overseas refers to someone who chooses to study away from his or her home country. Studying overseas is a great opportunity for all students who wish to study in a good and renowned university. Let's hear different views from my fellow group members. So Mr. Khalid, who has researched on the advantages, will be discussing with us now. So Mr. Khalid, what are your views on the advantages?
Thank you, Mr. Basim.
You're welcome.
Students studying overseas continue to influence interactions with people from different cultures and countries. Getting to know a new country where you are staying, seeing a different way of life and experiencing the way other people do things is generally a benefit of studying overseas. These benefits help the student to do things by themselves in foreign country and help interact with the new environment and friends. So all this experience will enrich oneself when you study overseas. That's all.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Khalid, for sharing your views with us. Now, is there anyone who would like to comment on what Mr. Khalid has just mentioned?
Yes, I would like to comment.
Yes, sure, Mr. Mohammed.
I agree with Mr. Khalid on the point which he mentioned that students studying overseas continue to influence interaction with people, different cultures and countries. And I believe this is positive for all students.
Oh,
That's it.
okay. Thank you for your comment, Mr. Mohammed. Now we'll hear Mr. Abdullah, who's on my right. He will share a disadvantage of studying overseas. So, over to you, Mr. Abdullah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Basim.
You're welcome.
It's my pleasure to share my views on disadvantages. Actually, to get into a good university and to study quality education, I think the disadvantages is the expensive of cost of living. So for most now university, the teaching fees are very high, which restrict the students to travel to country they are living in. In addition with it, also this another disadvantage is living cost. Because when you are study overseas, you have to buy extra money. But if you living in your hometown, you don't have to buy extra money. Beside all of that, I think when you study overseas, you will miss your family, friends, and you will feel homesick. That's all.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Abdullah, for your views on the disadvantages. So we're open for comments what Mr. Abdullah has just mentioned.
Yes.
Yeah, you would like to comment?
Yes.
Okay, sure.
I would like to say something.
Yeah, sure.
There are also major disadvantages of studying abroad, such as expensive cost of living. I feel that advantages and disadvantages part of life, but it all depends on the person. That's all.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Khalid, for your comment on what Mr. Abdullah just mentioned. So let's move on and hear some more disadvantages. So, which will be discussed by Mr. Mohammed Alindi, who's on my far left. So, Mr. Mohammed, what are your views on the disadvantages?
Thank you, Mr. Bassett, for giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts.
Sure, thank you.
There are many disadvantages of studying overseas, but don't worry, I will discuss a few of them. One of the disadvantages is that many students, when they are go away from home and family, get attracted to a few things which are either not allowed in religion or cultures, such as wearing not the right clothes in public, drinking, smoking, and going to dance bars. These are a few disadvantages which most students get addicted to. Once the students comes back to their home country, they forget their cultures and follow the one where they have studied. And this leads to the danger of leads to the danger of losing the cultures in which they were born into. That's it.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mohammed. Is there anyone who would like to comment on what Mr. Mohammed has just mentioned?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sure, Mr. Faisal.
With all my respect to Mr. Muhammad, but I disagree with him when he said that when students go outside, they start drinking or smoking and go to dance bars. And that's not correct, actually, because every student, it depends on the person himself and how his family raised him. That's it.
Oh, thank you for your comment, Mr. Faisal. I'm sure besides the disadvantages which Mr. Mohammed mentioned, there are also many advantages of studying overseas. So let's hear Mr. Faisal, who's on my far right. He will be telling us few advantages. So, Mr. Faisal, this discussion is all yours now.
Thank you, Mr. Bassan.
You're welcome.
I will be telling you some advantages of studying overseas. The advantages of studying overseas outweighs disadvantages greatly. And few of the important advantages are that the student being broad-minded and a good big job. And the experience of studying overseas helps the student faces things in many different ways and teach them how to tackle them. And one of the most important reasons which helps students is that companies and industries hire students and give them a good salary to start their life with. And I have just mentioned a few advantages, but I'm sure studying overseas have many other advantages which help the student in their life and build the student confidence. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Faisal. There's one point I really agree with you on. The point that you mentioned that the advantages of studying abroad outweighs the disadvantages greatly. And students planning to go out should focus on the advantages while they should be also aware of the disadvantages. Well, I'd like to conclude the discussion here that while the students are studying overseas offer great opportunities for a better future, it also has challenges that we must try to overcome and to make our dream come true. So at the end, I'd like to thank all of my fellow members who took their precious time and shared their thoughts and views of studying overseas. Thank you, everyone.
Yes.